Still to this day, I get lots of emails asking about various aspects of The Shining. People are fascinated with this movie. The most frequent question I've been getting asked these days is, how did Jack escape from the storeroom? Well, it's understandable because it's actually not a simple matter. Well, let's start with the basics. Theory number one is the obvious. Watching the movie, we're allowed to assume that the ghost Delbert Grady unlocked the door and let Jack out. He's talking to Delbert through the door, we can hear Delbert's voice, and we can hear the sound of the door apparently being unlocked at the end of the scene. And then we cut away, and next thing we know, Jack is freely limping about on an axe murder rampage. Question answered, case closed, right? Maybe. There are actually several possibilities of how Jack got out the store that don't involve supernatural events, and some of these you'll probably kick yourself, wondering why didn't I think of that, or why didn't I notice that? However, Kubrick does his usual thing of complicating the issue, so that we have to think about it and observe. First though, let me offer some Stanley Kubrick quotes that are relevant. During interviews about the film, he made various conflicting comments about whether there is or isn't something supernatural going on in the Overlook Hotel. He told interviewer John Hofstess, quote, "It's just a story of one man's family quietly going insane together," end quote. That comes off like a statement that all of the ghost visions are just in the characters' imaginations. But he also told Michael Ciment, quote, "I think the unconscious appeal of a ghost story lies in its promise of immortality. If you can be frightened by a ghost story, then you must accept the possibility that supernatural beings exist. If they do, then there is more than just oblivion waiting beyond the grave." End quote. Now that comes off to me as a strong indication that Kubrick was an atheist and that he didn't buy into the supernatural stuff that the film appears to promote or present. He also didn't have any instances in his film version of The Shining in which objects appear to move by themselves, whether by living human telekinesis or by ghosts moving things about, even though the novel and the faithful to the novel TV version of The Shining are both full of these telekinesis incidents. There is the issue of objects moving about and disappearing and reappearing between shots in Kubrick's version, which I believe he did deliberately to play on the audience subconsciously, but a lot of folks would just pass those off as continuity errors. But still, the point is, there's no overt telekinesis in this film. Kubrick also told Michael Ciment, when asked about the Shining novel, quote, "It's not until Grady, the ghost of the former caretaker who axed to death his family, slides open the bolt of the larder door, allowing Jack to escape, that you are left with no other explanation but the supernatural." End quote. And from that statement, we're allowed to assume that this is precisely the case in the movie as well. It does also appear to be the case that every supposedly supernatural event in the movie can be thought of as just hallucinations, aside from the opening of the storeroom door. There is the issue of Jack's photo in the gold room picture at the end, which wasn't in the novel, but that's part of a political theme about the gold standard. See my video Kubrick's Gold Story for a lot of detail on that, including very strong supporting evidence that I found at the Kubrick archives. Supporting the idea that ghosts in this movie are basically just hallucinations, film critic Roger Ebert took off his blindfolds for once and pointed out that whenever Jack encounters a ghost in this movie, there's usually a mirror present in the background, suggesting that Jack is talking to himself. The bartender, Grady in the bathroom here, and the Room 237 hag, these moments all involve the presence of mirrors. But hang on, when Grady talks to him in the store, there's no mirror present. Well, actually there is. The door that Jack is facing is a featureless metallic surface. The opposite side of the door has blocky patterns, and the walk-in freezer door has the same patterns on both sides. Only this specific door has a flat, featureless surface, creating a fuzzy mirror reflection which Jack is facing as he apparently hears Grady's voice. This is a strong indication that Jack was talking to himself again. In fact, if you look closely at this side of the door, it appears that some metallic paper or something has been pasted onto it to get the flat mirror look. The vertical etchings seen on the outside are still very faintly visible on this surface. Something else notable here is that there's a lack of visual detail in favour of the idea that a ghost let Jack out. We don't see the door open, and we don't see a change in the lighting of Jack's face that would occur if the door were opened off screen. We just have the sound of the unlocking to go by. So the scene is played as if he's imagining the sound, hearing voices in his head, and he's holding his sore head as he does this. Alright, so let's have a look at the door mechanism itself, because things start to get interesting here. The exterior of this door room has two industrial strength locks. The upper one just looks like a standard sliding bolt lock, but it's a hefty one. And the bottom one, I don't know what it's called, but it has a loose bolt on a chain that gets inserted vertically to lock the door, or pulled out to unlock it. It's an unusual lock design, and so Wendy initially is confused about how to open the damn thing. She also has trouble with the bathroom door lock here. Why? Is she a complete dunce when it comes to locking and unlocking doors? It's also funny that a door to a basic food store room looks like something strong enough to be found in Fort Knox, but I guess that this metal monster of a door emphasises that there's no way Mr. Torrance is going to kick in or barge his way through this door. On the inside of the door there's a second interesting feature, in addition to the fact that it's basically a featureless fuzzy mirror for Jack to talk to his own reflection. There's a really unusual protruding door handle. I don't think I've ever seen one of these anywhere, and it seems Kubrick wanted us to pay attention to this. This handle jarringly protrudes into the shot of Jack trying to talk his way out, and he has his hand on this handle for most of the shot, playing with his knob so to speak, and he keeps looking at the handle. Kubrick seems to want us to pay attention to this weird handle. This is almost certainly a safety release handle of some sort. If you get locked in the room, just turn it or push it and it will open the door mechanism, even if the door's been locked from outside. Makes sense, doesn't it? The walk-in freezer room would definitely need an internal safety release, and we can see the same kind of long knob-on-a-stick handle is in there too. If that's not a safety release, then anyone locking themselves in would freeze to death fairly quickly. Basic health and safety. Normally a safety door that needs to be unlockable from one side without a key would have a long horizontal push bar that's called a crash bar. And we can actually see in some of these shots that a fire exit in this kitchen has a standard crash bar. So given this is a constructed set, Kubrick and his crew have opted for a very unusual looking safety lock device on these big doors. I've done some online searching and have found no other examples of these kinds of door handles. So when I got onto this safety handle issue, I thought, hey, maybe Wendy doesn't realise that Jack doesn't even need a key to get out, he can just use the release handle. And maybe Jack fiddling with it and staring at this lock is because he knows very well that as soon as Wendy runs off he can just let himself out. However, we do see later that Jack had slept in this storeroom for a while before he is let out, and the notion of a safety release on the inside of this door is contradicted by the existence of the sliding bolt on the outside, that's the upper lock. I'm not a locksmith, but as far as I can tell there's no way to open this sliding bolt from inside. I thought that maybe Wendy had forgot to lock the sliding bolt, but we can see here that she has put it in the locked position. Why this door needs two industrial strength locks, I don't know. The other doors of a similar type only have the one lock. So maybe Mr. Ullman had half a dozen crates of caviar or some gold bars stashed away in this storeroom. I suppose Kubrick had identified a plot hole in the novel, the fact that such a door would have an internal safety release. I mean, you don't want to have a whole family staying in this hotel over winter and have one of them lock themselves in the storeroom and die. So Kubrick has worked his way around it by unrealistically adding the sliding bolt second lock. So this takes us back to the supernatural explanation, doesn't it? Well, not quite. There are several more ways that Jack could have got out of this room. So, theory number 2. This involves a little bit of reverse blueprint engineering of the set layout. There's some weird stuff going on with the 3 similar doors that are shown here. The one closest to us on the left is only about 6 or 8 feet from the very corner where these characters turn and then go into the storeroom. But the inside of the storeroom is at least 15 feet squared. In other words, this exterior door can only lead into one place, the same storeroom where Jack got locked in. But we can't tell from the inside if there's a second door because there are big storage units full of boxes against that wall. However, in this shot, some of that wall is visible. It's a bit dark, but we can see that there's a vertical dark stripe area, which might be the second door that we saw from outside. And so, it's possible that after having a hallucinatory chat with his imaginary friend, Mr. Grady, Jack noticed this hidden door and he opens it and gets out. It's plausible. The door certainly can't lead anywhere except into this storeroom. There is a contradictory shot though. After Jack has chopped away at the doors of the Torrance apartment, he's then seen backtracking his way through the kitchen and the front door to the storeroom is shown and it's open. Isn't it weird that Kubrick chose to show Jack right back here again? It's like he's deliberately showing us the storeroom again and saying, look everyone, the locked door is open. At the same time, he might be showing us a size comparison of the storeroom and the hallway next to it where the second door is, a further hint that the storeroom has two doors. One other detail that perhaps supports this second storeroom door interpretation is that as Wendy first enters the kitchen, a big door in the back has the words, "Fire exit must be kept clear," in huge letters, white on black, big enough to be read hundreds of yards away. The hotel is full of written signs, usually very small ones, but nothing comes close to the size of these letters. And the funny thing is that despite the size of the words and the keep clear instruction, these words are partially covered, the door is partially covered by kitchen equipment, just like the second door in the storeroom is covered by units full of food. The exterior maze also parallels this issue of there being a hidden side door. In the early shots, the entrance is at the side, and we can see that the map prop is right in front of it and there's some trees there. And at the end of the movie, the entrance has moved positions and is facing the hotel. Where have the trees gone? Where has the map maze gone? Or alternatively, there are actually two entrances to this maze. And the map of the maze shows a side entrance, but the possible presence of a front entrance is obscured so that we can't even see if there's one there. Sneaky Kubrick with the details. Okay, so here's theory number 3. This isn't one of my own theories, but I read it online and I thought it was interesting enough to include here. It's possible that the Shining supernatural power runs in the Torrance family so that both Danny and his father have it. This alternate theory posits that Jack was able to use telepathy to open the storeroom door himself. Personally, I don't really find this one convincing because at no point do Halloran or Danny openly demonstrate an ability to telepathically move objects. It's a nice idea though. Go check out Johnny 53's writing on The Shining for more on that theory. Maybe you'll find it more convincing than I do. On to theory number 4, and this is another quite simple one. We don't actually know where Jack gets the axe from, so maybe there was one in the storeroom. We see very little of the back wall, and so it could have been on there on the wall in a glass case or something. If Jack found an axe in this very storeroom, then maybe he managed to chop away at the doorframe and let himself out. Again though, this particular camera view doesn't support the idea because there doesn't appear to be any damage to the frame. It's a possibility though. And onto my final theory, theory number 5, which is that little Danny deliberately went into the kitchen and unlocked the door so that Jack could get out. Now you may think, what the fuck? But hear me out first. Wendy is asleep and Danny is wandering around. He grabs a knife, he writes red rum on the door and then he shouts, waking Wendy up. He's anticipating the fact that his father is on his way to kill them and he's warning her. It's possible that just before this and while she was asleep, Danny had snuck into the kitchen and unlocked the door to let Jack out. Jack was also asleep for a while, so Danny could have unlocked it while both his parents were asleep. Also interesting is that when Jack is locked in by Wendy, a box of Frosty's breakfast cereal is positioned so that Tony the Tiger appears to be watching the argument between Wendy and Jack. Remember that Danny has an imaginary friend called Tony, so maybe he can use his supernatural vision to see this argument, or maybe Danny is actually in the kitchen somewhere observing what's going on. It's just so weird that Tony the Tiger is thrown into this shot. However, Jack appears to try and use the release handle here, just right before he talks to Grady, and it seems that the door is still locked. So if Danny unlocked this door, then maybe it was right when Jack was talking to Delbert Grady, his imaginary voice form. But the big question there, why would Danny let Jack out? Well, quite possibly so that he could intentionally lead his psycho father into the maze and trap him so that he freezes to death. Jack has been an abusive father since well before they even came to the Overlook, and this is Danny's opportunity to kill him and do away with him once and for all. Here we can see that he deliberately stands out in the open so that his dad can see him, and then he lets himself be seen running into the maze. The fact that he knows the maze off by heart, even on a dark winter night, suggests that Danny has spent some time memorizing the layout of the maze in advance, possibly because he anticipated well in advance that his dad would go nuts. And in this moment, it was very unlikely that Jack would think to look for Danny inside a small cabinet in this hall, but Danny gets out and runs away, letting himself be seen. Danny also has a bit of an obsession with watching Roadrunner cartoons. And what does Roadrunner do? He taunts the coyote into giving chase and then outsmarts him, leading the coyote into some sort of trap like falling off a cliff or blowing himself up, whatever. And this is what Danny does when he traps Jack in the maze. He's got a very well thought out plan. And his backtracking through his own footsteps, that was a little stroke of genius for a kid to do. I mean, most adults wouldn't think to do that. There is another weird possibility that ties in with this interpretation. The maze itself is a symbolic representation of the hotel. It's not present in the exterior shot at the beginning. I've never heard of a maze that has lights everywhere inside. The maze layout alters all over the place. See my video on spatial anomalies for more about that. And the maze has an exit that changes places, like I said earlier. Well, not only do the maze and the storeroom have a front and side exit, the walk-in freezer in the kitchen also has two doors. Here, they walk in a door on one side of the hall, note the position of the glass windows, but when they go into the room, the door flips open the wrong way, and when they come out, they've emerged from a door opposite from the one that they supposedly went in. Note the position of the glass windows again. So if, like the changing maze, Danny was aware of this freezer double door, then perhaps Danny let himself get chased into the walk-in freezer, then he used the second door to escape and then locked both doors from outside, trapping Jack inside so that his abusive father freezes to death. And so what we see with the maze chase is just a surrealist representation of Danny locking Jack in the freezer. There is the issue of safety release handles on these two doors, but I don't know if those releases would bypass the vertical chain bolts on the outer side of the locks. Now this theory sounds very elaborate, doesn't it? And it is. I'm not totally convinced of it. But Danny leaves a trail of footprints in the maze for Dad to follow and thus gets him trapped. And as Danny and Wendy are shown around the maze-like kitchen in a spaghetti path that makes no sense, Wendy says,
"Yeah, this whole place is such an enormous maze. I feel like I'll have to leave a trail of breadcrumbs every time I come in."
Breadcrumbs, footprints, very interesting parallel. The layout of the worktops and tables in this kitchen also change between scenes, just like the layout of the maze does. These could be hints that Danny let Jack out of the storeroom and eventually let Dad chase him through the kitchen and into the walk-in freezer, and then locked him in. And here's another weird parallel. The film was shot in England, and huge amounts of salt were delivered in bags to be used as snow in the exterior shots. That's right, this is all salt. Amazing, isn't it? Well, just as Jack is seen frozen in the snow in the maze at the end, here he is seen sleeping on big sacks of holly salt, like he's already trapped in the snow. This is such a weird film. A last couple of strange things that might link in with these double door trail of footprint examples. When Danny approaches and tries to enter the locked room 237, a door behind him and across the hall is mysteriously open, as if someone might be watching him and could go in for a surprise strangle attack. And an email correspondent drew to my attention that when Jack has his encounter with the bathroom hag, he leaves the room and locks her in. In silhouetted form, Jack then carefully steps backwards along the hall, like Danny stepping backwards in his own footprints in the snow so that he could trap his psycho dad. So there you have it, folks. 5 possibilities as to how Jack got out the storeroom. Number 1, ghosts let him out. Number 2, he escaped through the hidden side door. Number 3, he used telekinesis to unlock the main door. Number 4, he chopped his way out with the axe. And number 5, Danny let him out. 3 of these 5 possibilities involve non-supernatural events, which would in turn lead directly to the possibility that there are no ghosts in the Overlook Hotel at all. Everything is just symbolic hallucinations relating to this family, who were already very troubled before they came to this hotel. Personally, I find some of these storeroom theories more convincing than others, but I'm not completely sold on any of them. So I'm going to hand it over to you and let you make your own mind up. I've done a lot of detective groundwork here, but maybe you can find some clues that I missed. If you do, I'd love to hear them in the comments section. Before I finish, I'm going to do a bit of shameless advertising. At the time of me posting this video, I have 10 digital download discount sets available on my website, ranging from 50 to 80% off, and a couple of them are Kubrick analysis compilations. These downloadable sets will be available over the Christmas 2019 period until New Year 2020, so be sure to grab the ones you want before the sale ends. The link to my order page is in the video description below. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go sneak out the side door while no one's looking.
Here's
Robbie!